Welcome to Biblio Bistro. My name is Meghan J. and I am a community health educator and registered dietitian with the Portage Health Foundation. And I have my lovely co-host with me, Michael Stenitis. And Michael, what do you do?
I'm the program coordinator here at Portage Lake District Library.
Anything else? In your back pocket, maybe?
In my back pocket? Oh, I have chickens.
You have chickens?
Yeah.
Did you perhaps cook as well?
Oh yeah, I
Yes.
did. I've cooked a little bit.
Are you a cooking master? Okay.
Yeah.
Good, because I'm not. So I'm going to need your help.
Okay, we can do that.
So Biblio Bistro is a program, if you're new to it, and it's all about cooking local food, trying to highlight that it doesn't have to be difficult, it can be flavorful, fun, and ideally, it doesn't have to take a ton of time.
Right, and we can get a lot of it right now here locally.
Absolutely. Yep, so we can check out the local farmers markets. If you're growing your own, great. So for today, we're actually featuring a kale dish. Yes, it's called slow cooked kale. We got our kale from the Boersma Roots family farm. And we also got some rosemary, and that is actually from my mother-in-law's garden, so thank you, Mom. Appreciate it.
Mom.
Yes.
Come on. Okay, so should we start with the kale?
Sure. I can give that to you, and I'm actually going to give just a little hint as to why we picked this recipe, Michael.
Okay.
So, this is something, you know, kale, I feel like a lot of people aren't necessarily as inclined to want to eat kale. It's a lot of, you know,
It's not my
there's a veggie
favorite.
that people
Yeah.
kind of want to steer clear of. Kale is
Yeah.
the one that comes up a lot for me.
Yeah.
I hope that this recipe will show you that it doesn't have to be super strong and pungent of a flavor. This is a slow cooked, and so it's going to really release some really mild flavors. It's going to kind of tone down some of the more upfront flavors that kale has. It's got some rosemary, so that kind of like a fall feel to it, and then garlic and onion.
I think for me it's like a texture thing with kale.
Yeah.
Like it's hard. It's hard. Like
It's tougher vegetable.
yeah, I think
not
that's
like
the
a
thing.
spinach.
Like when we did chard the last time, that's more my thing. And I think from like the cooking standpoint, should we just roll with that? Should we just get right into like what we want to get rid of on the kale?
Yeah.
Because so we used the stems on the chard, and we're
Sure.
not going to use the stems on the kale.
Okay.
We're going to do it just like I did with the chard before and fold it over in half.
Okay.
And make that spine go away. And I'll keep whacking through there if you want to tell us anything nutritionally fantastic about the kale.
Sure. So
Sell
I
it
have a
to
question
us.
for you first.
Yeah.
So why do we want to take the stem out for the kale but not the chard?
It's just, this is tough. You know what I mean? It really, this is, compared to the chard, this is really, really fibrous. Like it's kind of,
Okay.
I suppose there could be die-hard kale fans out there who might, you know, write in at the bottom of the video on YouTube and tell us that, oh no, they do something with the stems. I've never found anything to do with the kale stem, so I just cut it out because it is really, really thick. I mean, it's...
So it'd take a while to cook down, or
Yeah, and I just don't know that you would get anything out of it that would be terribly exciting.
Okay.
So I'm cutting it out. I'll
Okay.
take it home and give it to the chickens.
Well, I appreciate you explaining that for me. So kale is what we call a cruciferous vegetable, and there are other vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. Those would all be in the cruciferous family. Those types of vegetables in particular, Michael, are really good for digestive health. So especially, actually, it's been linked to lowering your risk of colon cancer. That's a big one. That being said, cruciferous vegetables are also kind of tough on your gut, and so if people have any sort of digestive issues, like I think I've mentioned this in other videos about garlic and onion, those are kind of tougher compounds. Cruciferous veggies are in that camp, so especially if you're having any sort of stomach issues, I would suggest trying it cooked first, and
Right.
especially a slow cooked recipe like this where you're really going to break it down versus a quick cook with something like kale. That's only going to make it easier for you. The more it cooks, the less your stomach has to do to digest it. So
Nice.
I would suggest that to start
All right.
when you're chopping it.
We're gonna roll. Okay,
Keep going.
the recipe wants us to blanch it. So I'm just doing a rough chop on this stuff, maybe rough like inch squares or whatever. And we already have the water boiling. We were trying to like shave the time down here a little bit. So we've got our water boiling, and I'm just gonna dip it in there for like a minute or two, just to wilt it a little bit. This is gonna help break down that really fibrous texture of the kale.
So if you've already said this, Michael, I apologize, but for the technical cooking term, I believe that's called blanching, correct?
That would be blanching,
Okay.
yes. Blanch. It is.
And you can do that with more than kale too. Like I know some people do it. If you like your vegetables kind of crisp, you could do that with really any vegetable. Just throw it in for a couple minutes. What's nice about blanching as well is that it really preserves the color of the vegetables because it's a quick flash boil, so to speak. So not only do you get the crispy texture, but it's a little bit cooked, but it's a really bright color. So that's a really fun way, especially if you want to add like some bright colored veggies like carrots or something like that to your salad and just switch it up a little.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of time.
That's why we do it when you're preserving food, right? Does it help with vitamin retention?
That would depend. So with some of the water, you're going to lose some sorts of nutrients. They're called water soluble. So I think we talked in the past about fat soluble vitamins. So
butter. I heard you say butter.
Butter. I don't know that butter would be a fat soluble vitamin, but it is a fat that would help you absorb vitamins.
Okay.
Yes. So kale actually has some fat soluble vitamins in it, particularly vitamin K as well as vitamin A. So those ones, when we cook it in something like water, if there's excess, that's going to be preserved within the vegetable. But there are water-soluble vitamins, which is pretty much everything that's not fat-soluble. There's only 4 fat-soluble vitamins, and that's vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. Cool. So anything outside of that is what we would consider a water-soluble vitamin, which means that we are going to lose some of that in the water. That being said, you can still get some of that nutrient. And things like vitamin C is in a lot of different fruits and vegetables, and so you get your chance throughout the day to up that intake. I wouldn't steer away from it if that's your concern.
Cool. Okay, we've got that blend. So in order to have this done in a timely fashion, everybody, we did start a batch of this beforehand, and I'm happy to report it's looking good. But we'll swing back to the recipe. So what it wanted us to do is blanch the kale and then squeeze it out and get it nice and dry. It's a little hot. You could wait for it to cool a little or not. And then the rest of the recipe goes as follows. We chop up a half an onion, a couple cloves of garlic, that beautiful rosemary from your mother-in-law. You need that. So what I did in the pan following the recipe was I did up the garlic and did up the onion, just in like a really simple chop. No big shebang here. Let's see, we'll make a little pile over here. Let's see, what am I missing, Megan? Is this everything?
That would be, there's an optional ingredient, which is a dried chili, if you want to add a little bit of heat to that. We don't have that today, but you could have that if you wanted to kick it up a spice level. I think that would really kind of bring it together too. It's a nice hearty dish. Something that's interesting about this recipe, some rosemary recipes, if you can kind of see the stalk here, try and show that. You can kind of just peel off the little individual leaves, I'll call them, or sprigs. This one actually has you put the entire rosemary stalk in, and that, especially when you cook it in with the olive oil, it allows that aroma and the oils to kind of really soak up those nutrients and get that flavor without the actual sprigs in it. So you'll eventually remove that rosemary.
So like now, I will eventually remove it from the pan.
But you can eat the sprigs. I mean, you wouldn't want to eat the stalk.
Should I do it?
Do you want to?
Let's do it. Let's live on the wild side today.
Goodness.
It's Friday, right? I'm just gonna. I'm gonna chop it off a little bit. Like I know that when it's dry, it's easy to just. Oh yeah, no, it's coming. So we just kind of peel it off the stem like this. So as the recipe, we'll return to that for a second, just because we had to go a little on the front end. You're gonna saute up your garlic, your onion. And then throw your rosemary in there, and then, oh, the onion got me. I'm not crying really. And there we go, we got rosemary back in it, and then the kale would come last, the blanched kale. After you got the garlic and the onions softened up with that, do the kale in there, and this is eventually what you're shooting for. It's a half an hour that you're slow cooking all of this stuff together on low to medium heat. And it does say that you want your kale to look kind of dried and darker.
Like crispy and darker on the edges.
Are we there?
I think we're pretty close. Yeah.
I mean, this has been cooking for about 20 minutes, give or take, 20, 25. So I think we're pretty much there. Can you think of anything else?
No, I guess the only thing I would say is that just to kind of understand the process of it, you know, my guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this, with the blanching first and then the cooking, you know, because kale is a tougher, hardier vegetable, that can work to your advantage. Like if you want to throw it in a pan, it's not going to really cook down for a long time.
No, I think you could actually err on the other side and forget about it. That's
right.
It needs a while.
So I think that the blanching step in here is to try and speed that up. So it's a slow cook with the blanched kale, the 30 minutes. If you were to not blanch the kale, I imagine it would probably take a little bit longer.
I bet it would. I think it would be really different too.
Yeah. So I was just curious what your thought was. That's just me shooting in the dark, trying to.
No, I think it's cutting. I think it's cutting it down, but it also breaks down the fibers a little bit. So it's looking pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Should we try it?
Sure.
And just see if it really panned out for us.
Absolutely.
I think it looks good. It looks like the recipe tells us, so that's like not a bad thing. Here we go. You can start since you're the kale, we'll call you the kale queen. What do you think?
The kale queen.
Kale queen. Do you want to be the kale queen?
I sure can. This is something, you know, I can already tell just playing around with it with my fork, it is definitely crispier than other kale recipes that I've tried.
Right.
So I'm excited to
Which
try
is the goal.
Yes.
The long slow cook. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm with you. So I think when people make kale chips, this is probably what they're shooting for too. You see those everywhere.
I'd say it's a little moister than a kale chip, but it's definitely crunchier than what I would anticipate cooking kale that way.
I got the rosemary for sure.
The rosemary is nice. It's not overwhelming, but there's this nice undertone there. You know, so this is something that you could use in omelet fillings. You could use that, you know, even just as like a side dish.
Yeah. You could do it ahead of time.
Yep.
And have it for... Add
it to pasta salad, or even like I could see that going really well with like breakfast potatoes, like a hash or something like that, with the rosemary and the onions in there. Right. Is there anything else you would pair that with?
A roast chicken.
Roast chicken.
But I'm in that groove now, I think, in the fall cooking.
Yeah, this is a perfect dish for fall as we're kind of moving towards that season.
And will they have it at the farmers market, do you think, through the fall? It's a fall crop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, kale and the rosemary should be there.
Good.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. If you want to tune in to future recipes or just check out what we've already done, you can go to pldl.org/Biblio-Bistro. And you'll find all of our recipes as well as any other episodes that we've created.
And everything is in the show notes as well.
Yep, if we're looking for cost or any, you know, our tidbits, what to take away from Michael, what to take away from me, that'll be in the show notes as well. And if you would like to cook along with us, feel free to use #Biblio Bistro and show us what you've created.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for joining us.